Okay, so I think we are going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone today. Just a little housekeeping before I introduce our speaker. We are using GoToWebinar, which we have been using for all of our webinars, and we are going to be taking questions at the end. So feel free in the questions box to type them in at any point. And then we will save those and offer them up to our speaker when she's done with her presentation. Again, you can join by telephone or mic and speakers on your computer. Please chat us if you have any questions or you're having any technical issues. Okay, and our speaker today is Amy Weinberger. She is an educational consultant and has her own consulting company. She comes to us with a lot of experience working with various students, teachers, families, first responders. She has a Master's of Science in Instructional Media, and we're really excited to have her today talking about IEPs, individualized education plans, and working with schools and your kid and families. So I am going to turn this over to Amy.
So good afternoon.
You are good.
That is out there. When I was asked to be part of your community for today, I had asked Jackie to send out some emails and find out what kind of questions there were or there are regarding IEPs. I have 35 years of IEP and 504 work, as well as principalships and collaboration in community and how to get services to kids and of course to families as well, because we all need the different supports. So one of the questions that was asked that came back through the asking was, how can a parent incorporate accountability into their IEP? So I wanted to talk about what that looks like. You may already know about it, but it's called SMART. So S-M-A-R-T, is the acronym. And the way that you incorporate accountability is by using the SMART. I don't know if you know about that, but I want to make sure you have that arsenal, that card in your back pocket when you're writing an IEP. The state has mandated that the S is for the specific action, where the M has to be the measurable. So whatever it is you're asking for, the measurability of it actually has to be something measured in numbers. All right, so the student will perform something how many times with a percentage of an outcome. The A is actually action words, so demonstrate, perform, jump, raise hand, whatever the ask is for would be the action word. The R is for the realistic and the relevant, so it has to be something that can actually be obtained. And then of course time limited, within a year, within 3 months, the first quarter. So that answers the question of accountability into an IEP as far as writing specific goals. So if you don't mind, Jackie, I'd like to open it up for this particular question, because I have 5 specific comments on IEP 504 interaction. So does anyone have questions regarding this SMART thing, and has anyone ever used it or been told about it?
Yep, anyone can feel free to type in the question box.
Yes.
Nope, someone says they have not heard of it before.
Okay, so what I'll do I'm going to put I'm going to actually, give you notes. Now it's just going to you, Jackie. Can you open up? It says to organizers. Can you open? Can it be for everyone?
No, we do not program these as poll questions ahead of time, so we can't open these up. But I'm getting a bunch of people responding that this is all new information. Nope, never heard of these, never heard of SMART. Someone says I've used it in IFSP goals.
Oh, okay. Okay, so let me review what it stands for so that you feel clear, and I'll put it in this box so you can see it, Jackie, and disseminate that information as well. So the S is for specific, the M is for measurable, the A is for action words, what you want to get accomplished, the R is for realistic and irrelevant, and I'd like to kind of focus on that in a second. and the T is for time limited. So clearly our IEPs are typically, you know, they're redone every 3 years, but you have access to them anytime during a year. You can always call for IEP or a 504 planning meeting or to change something. That is always your option. It's never not an option. They're realistic and relevant because of some of the situations that you guys are in with your children. What's really hard is we have that emotional piece that comes with us to an IEP. So prior to getting to the IEP, you are allowed to request a draft of what the school has already proposed that they're bringing to the table prior to your meeting. Has anyone asked that before? Asked for the draft before? If you could fill me in on that, Jackie.
They're never really ready with the draft ahead of time. No, also, a lot of people didn't know that in Massachusetts, the team develops the goals together.
Yeah, so, you know, the older the student is and the more capable the student is, they get, of course, a chance to develop the IEP. But you are allowed full access to a draft copy. And what I would suggest, and it's not defensive at all, because we don't want to create defensiveness. We want to be actually on the offense, which creates the opportunity to ask for the draft copy. So when you're called in for an actual meeting, or you're calling an IEP review meeting, before you get to that, you get to say, hey, can I go ahead and get a draft of what you guys are thinking about, so I can also think about, you know, some SMART goals and make sure that we can actually achieve them, so that it saves you emotion and time when you get into the actual meeting. And when and that way you get to look at the goals not for the first time, which is so important, because when we get to look at things for the first time in those meetings, we feel so anxious about it. So this is one way to reduce anxiety.
So Amy, we have a couple comments and questions about that. Someone said they're working on their first IEP now. They'll ask for a draft. They didn't know that was an option. And then someone wants to know, how do you request that? In an email, in writing?
Always put everything in writing. So you have a paper trail just for, you know, your CYAing yourself. You're always covering yourself. But you can ask for it kindly. Hey, I'd like to have a draft before that meeting. Is that possible? And the answer is, in this county, in Sarasota County, has always been yes. Or I'll get it to you tomorrow, or can I have it? Or, you know, will you give me a couple days? We're still working on it here. And of course, so that you can just open the conversation. Come from a place of kindness, because otherwise the county or the school will get pretty defensive, and we're trying to reduce defensiveness and improve collaboration.
And then someone else says that where they live, a draft is discouraged because the entire team is involved in creating the IEP document.
Yeah, the entire team should be involved in it. You're looking, and that's not incorrect, but by having a draft, you're trying to reduce the defensiveness of being in an IEP meeting, especially if it's your first one, or especially if you've had lots of roadblocks or barriers around getting what you think would be fair, you know, would be realistic and relevant for your child or teen. So we're not trying to disqualify or disinvite anyone to the IEP team or the table. We're trying to be actually prepared on our end, because, you know, it's 1 to 20 people in an IEP sometimes, and it doesn't give us, the persons who are, you know, organizing this for our child or teen, the opportunity to think, because it's so emotional. So if you are denied, that is a breach. That is not correct. And they can say, hey, the speech language pathologist hasn't chimed in, and you can be, oh, that's fine. The speech language pathologist always has the best goals. They have the SMART goals always, as does the occupational therapist. But the academic goals are really the ones that are typically not as smart, if you will. The OTs and PTs and speech language pathologists were trained, so it's just a different space and perspective that they come from. So you can guarantee that they'll have your SMART goals, even if it's not already in your IEP draft, and you're really more concerned about the academic, if that helps.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so I'd like to move to the next question. One of the questions that came up was how to add toileting, or if the child is younger, potty training to your IEP. So I want to give you the process. Sorry, I run a program at one of the public schools here. I'm actually on the outside of the room. I'm sorry for the background noise, but I couldn't leave the space. The first thing that you do when you're asking for adding toileting to your IEP is you have to write a letter to the IEP team. You have to describe what the problem is, and then you have to include the consequences and the repercussions of what is actually happening as a result of your child not being toilet trained. So being toilet trained is an IEP issue, and it is possible to get it. Now, the question might come up is, how, depending on the severity of the severity of the trouble of potty training for the student, is how long will it take? And of course, that comes under one of the SMART goals, are realistic and relevant. So that can be time managed over time. The second thing is you ask the team to meet once you've written the letter to describe your IEP to your IEP team, the problems and the consequences and the repercussions. And you want to state that you wish to discuss toilet training goals and protocols. So be very clear, very explicit. There's no need to beat around the bush. The third thing that you want to do, in case you're getting pushback, is in your letter and in your discussion at the IEP meeting, is to actually include success stories, which you can find on rightslaw.org, WRIGHT law. And they are the go-to for us parents who have needed IEPs in 504. They have plenty of stories, they have the law spelled out, and all kinds of different references. Number 4, the fourth thing that you do is you document. And after the meeting that you actually wind up having, you write a short note that summarizes what the team actually agreed to do. And you want to add in that you expect to see this information on the PWN, which is the prior written notice, and proceed accordingly. So there's nothing here that should be defensive, because this is how the law is written. In addition, you want to make sure you're using appropriate language. So if your child is 10 years old, we don't want to have potty language. We want to have toilet or the restroom. So be on top of the language. Be consistent. Make sure the protocol is being followed, not only at school but at home, or not only at home but at school. So keep it consistent in both environments or multi-environments. And of course, you have the option of thinking outside the box always. And maybe your child actually needs a photograph of your actual bathroom and not the PACS diagram. So that might need an upgrade. Maybe they need a 3D object such as a pull-up. So you know your child, you know what they need, but make sure you're always thinking out the box as the child is aging. Let me know if there are any questions or feedbacks.
One question that came in a couple minutes ago.
Yeah.
Can transportation be in an IEP just beyond provided to and from school?
Can transfer?
Transportation.
Oh, transportation. The answer is yes, in a public setting, not in a private or a charter necessarily, but public, yes.
Great. And then I think in reference to what you were just saying, there's a question, step 2, goals and question mark.
Say that one more time, Jackie.
I can ask for a little more clarification, but I think someone wanted more information. Step 2 in goals and question mark.
Yeah, so step 2, after you've written the letter to your child's IEP team describing the problem, including consequences and repercussions, the step 2 is ask the team to meet. And then state when you ask that you want that meeting to discuss the toilet training goals and protocols, and what you're doing at home, what is working, and what's happening at the school, and you want to be consistent with that. The third thing after that was include success stories. So come to the table with solutions already that the school may not have thought of. You have that option to do that. And that information is located at rightslaw.org. I do have another source that I want to share with you. I'm going to ask if I can go into this more quiet room 1 second. Let's see, because they're having a good time. Let me just ask. May I come in to finish this webinar? Okay, thanks. Let me grab my stuff, guys. Thank you. All right, I'm just moving locations, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Sereno. All right, can you guys still hear me, Jackie? Is this better?
Yeah.
All right, very good. All right, so I would like to give you another resource regarding that topic of toileting in a IEP collaboration, and that's using your Family Network on Disabilities Parent Support Network. And if I type in the message here, Jackie, of that link, can you share it?
Yeah.
Can you share a link? Okay, I'm going to
And
go
it's
ahead.
possible that you can also below that in the two, you should be able to select all entire audience and it'll go to everybody.
Oh, mine just says organizers and panelists.
Oh, okay. Then I will send it to everybody. I can copy it and send it.
Yeah, okay. So if you could push this out, fndusa.org. Okay, that's the email to get more specific questions. I'm sorry of all the background noise. There's just so much going on. And then here is your website, fndusa.org/contact/US programs PSN. There you go. So this organization, this is directly into Florida. I don't know where everyone is calling into or in from. But
we
if
have
you
people
go
from all over the country, all over the world.
Okay.
So
this is all over the United States. So if you click on this website and go to the map, you can click into your state and get more information.
We also had someone write in addition to Rights Law, states offer parent training and processes specific to their state. Would you recommend parents take a training? ParentCenterHub.org.
I would recommend that parents always take a training when you have a child that's involved. Yes, yeah, it helps you. For those, particularly for the parents who feel, very leadership, there's some parents who would not take that, because it's uncomfortable. But I would always recommend that extra training. Yeah. I don't know if there are any other questions about that.
So this may have been in reference to the draft, but I think people had some questions about a time frame. Someone said I was under the impression that it should be sent out 5 business days prior. I don't know if this is in reference to when you were talking about the draft or if this is something else.
Oh, okay. So once an IEP has been called for and you've gotten your notice that this is going to happen, you can ask for the draft. There's not a 60-day thing. That's after. So the way it works is once you've stepped into an IEP meeting and all the testing has happened, our IEP has been called for, you're at that level, then a county has a 60-day window to complete all the testing and gathering all the information. And then after that, it takes time to write it up. So that's a lot of time when we're talking year to year, right? So you always want to start your IEP meetings the year prior to the initiation if you can. I hope that answered a little bit.
And then what is CYA?
Cover your ass. I just couldn't say it because there were kids around.
Yep. Okay, those are all the questions for now.
Okay, so let me go to my next question was, what's the legal responsibility of the schools and how can this be properly written in an IEP? So the legal responsibility of the schools, if we backtrack to the last question that I just gave, answer to the question of, in the case of toilet training, it is part of an IEP. It's part of that child or teen coming to the school. So there is a legal responsibility, and that's why it's very obviously a delicate issue. Someone's in someone's space, which can be kind of weird, right? So you want to think about all those things and you want to have all those conversations, so there's the biological part, there's the touching part, there's the cleanliness part, hygiene. So all those parts should be part of goals in your IEP regarding toilet training. I want to make sure I said that well. I don't know if there are questions coming in. I have my next question, so.
Nope, no questions yet.
All right, so the next question that was that came in for this moment of time was about transition planning. Okay, so transition planning. I want to make sure that you go to Rights Law. I said .org, it's a .com, forgive me. It's rightslaw.com. There is an entire section on rightslaw.com about transition planning. And I would love to be able to share that with you. I don't know if I can share anything on the screen with you.
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay, so I'm going to pull that up for you. Now, can I share my screen?
Yes.
All right. Let's see.
In your GoToWebinar panel, you should be able to share your screen.
That one. That's you. You don't need that. That should be share my screen right there. That's just not share my, let me see. Nope. Well, I'm clicking the button that has, it's only, stop showing screen. Can you see my screen? Can you see this?
No, we can just see you.
Okay, I just moved me. So I'm wondering, webcam, I've clicked all the buttons and it says I'm sharing. So
in your GoToWebinar panel, is there an option where you can see show and then show my screen? There we go. Yes, we see it.
Can you see it now? Did that do
Yep.
it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, good. Oh, I'm so glad. So this is Rights Law. I'll make it a little bit bigger. So here's Rights Law. There's everything that you could possibly want to know about Rights Law and the question of transitions. So they also have training programs all around this country. And if you ever have a topic, you can just go topics from A to Z. And these are all the topics from A to Z. And here's a section on transitions. So what they do a really great job of is, let me move this part for you. What they do a really great job of is they'll list a transition service, how it is a set of activity for the child with disability, where it comes from, what section it comes from, and then it has all the articles about transitions. And this is just a library and wealth of knowledge. I own these books, Special Education Law, From Emotions to Advocacy, all about IEPs. This is all put out by Rights Law, and you can get them downloaded as well as you can get the hard copy of books. In addition, they have the Find Attorney, Advocates, and Therapists yellow pages for kids as well. So I want to go more into transitions. I'm wondering if anyone has a comment or a question at this point.
Nope, no questions coming through right now.
Okay, so everything feels clear. Do parents feel like they're getting what they were hoping for, I guess, is the feedback I'm looking for more specifically before I move along.
Feel free to type in any further questions if there's anything more you're looking for. We also put out a link ahead of time that people could submit questions. So I do have 4 questions from people who may or may not be on right now. So whenever you want to kind of take a turn, I'm happy to propose those questions to you.
Okay. I have one more. I just want to take a look at transition planning, because this question that did come in is our school does not have a transition program, so they contract out with other facilities. And the family who wrote in, we wrote in goals to explore transitions and options and to visit sites. And the school's been following through, but still they have no idea how people know what this is supposed to look like. And she said she has a year and a half to figure it out. So my answer to that is, my first question, is it a public school? Which, if it's a public school, then they are obligated to have a transition program or get access to that. If it's a private school, there is no obligation. If it's a charter school, it's just weaker. So if you're at a charter school, you can go into your local school district and do transition planning into your local neighborhood school. That's another way to perhaps handle that. I want to bring this up to everyone. These are the legal requirements in IDEA for transition, and these are the big questions that are asked. And this goes directly to the question that was asked to me. All right. So this gives you step by step. And I think someone had said when the teenager is involved, then student can always participate. 14 is when starting at 14 and continuing to the student is no longer eligible for special education, the IEP must do these. So these are must do's. In addition, this is the list right here of youth and adolescent development for positive results as you're planning your transitions. All right, and those are the questions that I had prior to today's meeting. So you want to go ahead and perhaps, unless there are questions on the board, perhaps give me those other questions. I hope everyone's enjoying the afternoon, and I hope this is helpful to you.
Yeah, so feel free to continue to type in some questions for discussion while you all are thinking about that. I will read you some of the questions that came in. So one is, how do I insist my child be retained in their current grade? She's in 4th grade and has never been held back.
Oh, that's a great question. All right, so it depends on the county policy or perspective. In this county, in Sarasota County, retention is typically not an option unless it is data-based proven. For example, the FSA in 3rd grade wasn't passed, Florida State assessment or standard assessment, and or the portfolio assessments they do during the summer were also not to par. So an answer to that question, well, you can move your child into a private school. That's what I wound up doing, because I did not agree with the county's with a school's assessment when my daughter was in 3rd grade, and I thought she needed a year retention for language issues. So I moved my kid. I had that luxury. Not everyone has that luxury. So what schools look at is they look at big pictures. So at the end of a quarter, if all the grades are C's and above, but you know the struggle that it took to get to C's and above, you actually have to bring in the paperwork. I would bring in some video of times when your child is just having a really tough time at home with schoolwork, how much work you have to actually do so the kid is passing. I would be very transparent, and they will probably still say no.
So the parent is on and said that it won't be passed. We're in Lake, she doesn't know her ABCs.
Go before she doesn't know the ABC part. What did you say before the ABC part?
We are in Lake.
Oh, Lake. Okay. Yeah, so what grade?
4th grade, I think is the 4th grade, yeah.
So does that mean that the student passed the state requirements for third?
No,
So if they did not pass the state requirement for third and they were not held back, that's a conflict.
but they passed her.
Okay, so now you have the opportunity. Is she currently failing?
No.
Okay, that's why. So you can hire an educational consultant, you can change schools, and you can provide evidence that from a psychological education report, psychoed evaluation from a psychologist, where the young lady stands. And that, if it's a reputable psychologist that the school board or the county recognizes, that could be a ticket to a retention.
Okay. I think that hopefully was helpful. I have an ABA
Okay,
in school with her.
Oh, you do? Okay. So if you have an ABA in the school, I guess the next question would be to get, can you get the ABA to also to make that recommendation too if if the ABA has not?
Yeah, so she said it looks like the ABA is asking to hold her back.
Okay, okay, very good. That would be a great thing in your court.
Okay, we're going to move on to another question. I think that was a good discussion.
Yeah, that was
someone who is on wrote in, I have the IEP, and for the most, our son is regressing academically, even though the goals are to get him to grade level in the public school. What can we do? I requested another meeting to discuss this. What should I prepare to hear from the team about the teachers not implementing the IEP goals?
That's a tough question. It's a tough answer, not the question. The question is, I'm sorry you have to ask the question, actually. All right, so say the question one more time, because there are a couple parts and I want to write down those parts so I get them. Can you see my face again? What happened here?
Yes, we can see both your screen and your face.
Okay, fabulous. So ask it one more time.
So the parent, I have the IEP, and for the most, our son is regressing academically, even though the goals are to get him to grade level in the public school. What can we do? I've requested another meeting to discuss this. What should I prepare to hear from the team about the teachers not implementing the IEP goals?
And do we have proof that the IEP is not being implemented? Let's start there. Is there drop dead proof?
Yes, he's failing.
Oh, okay, he's failing. Okay. So the first thing that you do is you take your first academic goal, whatever that is, under whichever domain it is, and was it a SMART goal? Was there a percentage? Was there a time limit? Was it, relevant, etc.? So let's ask that question first.
Yes, and he has become more nonverbal.
Okay, so there's emotionality coming along with frustration, it sounds like, or vice versa. So what you can expect to hear from the teachers is we don't have enough help. We don't know how to implement. We don't know what to do. He's not responding. So you'll probably hear some defensiveness. I think that it would be important to be able to show that he is making progress using something else. I don't know if he has any outside help. Is that going on? Are there any outside resources that are being used?
Yes, we homeschooled him prior.
Okay, but not now, right?
And I have work samples.
Okay, good. So one of the things that you can actually do, I think, without being defensive, although it's not going to feel so good, I'm sorry in advance, is you can actually ask for, because he has an IEP, a change in curriculum, a change in person delivering. If there's this much regression, you can ask for those things. It's when a student who is on tier 3 is not making progress, they have to change some things up, some delivery models, sometimes a teacher. sometimes the curriculum. So, but go in with specific, if it's in reading, if it's in math, if it's in spelling, you know, what the IEP is, specifically how they're measuring it, how they're delivering it, and how the student, in this case your son, how he's taking it or not, like what's happening. And if the teacher comes back and says, you know, we're just hitting walls, a conversation has to open up is with, does that child fear that person? Is that, you know, is it the delivery? Is the person becoming impatient? Sometimes it's not a match. So you're allowed to ask all those questions. As uncomfortable it is, you may ask those questions, like what's happening during implementation? Why do we have regression? You're allowed to ask that.
The parent says that he had a test and he failed. I retested him and he passed the retest.
Right. So does he
had some fear.
Right. So, you know, you get to say, hey, this is what's happening. How can we bridge this so my child feels successful, my son feels successful? Do I need to come in? Do you have a volunteer who can read it? What do we need to change? Because this is not acceptable.
So another parent wrote in asking, does the district have an autism specialist? We were able to call in a parent request to have the autism specialist shadow the child for the day. In our case, the school just did not know how to work with our child. The autism advocate from the district was able to hold the school accountable to their suggestions. We had them come out 3 times and it was very helpful.
Good, very good. That's a wonderful idea. Love it. I would absolutely agree. Now, sometimes I've gone into schools when a kid isn't connecting with the teacher, and I've gotten permission to go in from the families and the teacher where they collaborate, and I go in 3 days a week and do a lesson or help the child organize or restate something that the teacher was having a difficult time with, because the child and I already had a relationship. So you can ask for those things. That's totally fair. It actually takes the burden off the school a little bit.
And will we have to pay for that specialist? Cynthia, I know you were the original person who typed that in. So Cynthia, I don't know if you can tell us if that was something that you had to pay for, or Amy, if you know.
Yeah, so the school won't pay for it unless there's a contract with that organization to come in, or you have a private donor, or you're paying for it. And in a couple of my cases that we've had a private donor step up, or the parent pays, or I've just volunteered because I couldn't stand it going wrong. So I'm like, I'm just coming in. So it really depends.
Okay, so the parent who wrote in said that it was free. It was no cost to them.
Good, excellent, good.
The school district has a paid autism specialist, so it was a free service.
Okay, excellent. Definitely tap into that. You can also tap back in. We had talked earlier, hold it, let me get my resource. We had talked earlier about the Family Network on Disability Parent Support Network project. The fndusa.org, and they may also have resources that the schools are allowed, that you as a parent are allowed to tap into as well. And of course, there's always Autism Speaks in your local state and district.
Great. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We have about 15 minutes, great. Is it better to try to approach a difficult IEP as parents with an advocate or using a lawyer? In our case, we will be seeking a private facility funded by the school district, and up to this point, we've done it all ourselves. What is the best protocol to keep the district supportive?
Okay, great question. So my question back to you before I answer is, have your meetings been going well and productively? So answer that one first.
Yes.
All right. As long as they're going well,
They've
really
done all we asked.
Okay, then you don't really need to bring someone else in unless you're feeling so emotional about it that you would like your own support, but it's not someone who's antagonistic. It could be a neighbor, it could be, you know, your bestie, just so that you have another set of ears hearing. But if all is going well, I would leave it as it is. If you're feeling strained and you're feeling like some things aren't working, you can bring an advocate in. You can bring someone in from Family Network on Disabilities, because the school recognizes them as someone who is not antagonist. So that is fine. If things are not going well, I wouldn't just jump to an attorney first. That usually doesn't work out so well. Everyone's all mishy and mashy, and it doesn't feel good. So if you bring in an advocate, that would be the first line, is to bring in a friend and then an advocate, and then if you're really troubled, you can bring in your attorney. But I love the idea of using your family network or disability support network as well. They know what they're doing, you know, they're peer supports.
Okay, next question. When you are looking for a new school for a child that needs an IEP and deciding between public and private, is there a specific resource you would use or specific questions that you would ask?
So a private school doesn't use an IEP. The IEP is only a public school mandated legal document. It's not a private school legal document. That doesn't mean that a private school won't look over it and make sure that they have services and all those sorts of things. But IEP is only a public school document. Did I answer that enough?
But what if the public school is paying for it?
Oh, well, which state are we talking about? Because state laws are different. Which state is
Yeah,
this?
it is different state by state. I know the original person who asked the question was in Florida, but then there was a follow-up question, and we have people from all over. So
All right. So I'll use the example.
Okay, in someone's case, California. Someone else is in California.
All right. So in California, so I'll compare California to Florida because they're like the closest sometimes. Florida has when you get an IEP and you want to leave a public school and go into a private school, we have a McKay scholarship. And that money generates from anywhere from like $3,500 all the way up to $25,000, depending on the need of the student, the intensity. When you leave a public school in the state of Florida and you go into a private, that money flows back into that private school. The key, though, is even if the public system is paying for it, the private school may not have all the resources, and so that money just looks like tuition as opposed to resources. So when I ran a school in Florida, the purpose of the school was to be able to use the McKay dollar for their services written out on the IEP, and the rest was the tuition. So if there was $5,500 worth of services that child was supposed to, you know, speech or OT, PT, language-based, whatever it was, then we took that $5,500 or $10,000 or whatever it was, we backed that into service providing, and the rest was tuition. That is not how schools work, unfortunately. So you have to be very careful with whatever public school you're going from into what private school you're going from, because the private school has to have the services that the public school is paying for. Does that help? Even in California or Nebraska, whatever state you're in.
And does the IEP transfer from school to school, public school?
Yes.
And does that depend on the state?
So if we get a student from New York and they move down into Florida, we will take the New York IEP, but because the IEP goals system is different in the state of Florida, or if I'm transferring in New York or wherever I'm transferring to, the school will reconvene and rewrite an IEP based on what is provided in that state as far as different levels of services. So yes, IEPs can travel state to state, but they will shift based on the services that a state and district provide.
And then someone asked 30 days to make changes, question mark?
Yes. Yes. And that's on rights law, how you transfer in from state to state. And I believe it actually gives each state's information. So that's very helpful.
Great. Okay, recommendations for post-high school IEPs, particularly the triannual. Our daughter, age almost 20, is enrolled in an adult transition program until age 22. We lost speech and language in last year's IEP and are requesting to look at it again later this month.
So our IEPs go to 22 or 23 depending on the state you're in, and it is very difficult to get transition services depending on your depending on the district that you're actually in. You are allowed to keep asking for those services. Different Oh, no, come on in. No, oh, sure, of course. Different districts offer, or different, different districts offer different vocational and transitional services. So for example, in the county of Sarasota, we have something called the Glengarry Academy, and that is for people 18-plussers who have mental health concerns and need to transition to learn how to get a job, write a resume, work in their kitchen area because they serve lunch, breakfast and lunch. So make sure that you're also looking into your community's resources and pull that into your IEP as well. Did I answer that okay or well enough for you? Always keep asking, for the resources from your district.
Great. Okay, we have someone, we have homeschooled since kindergarten, and this year we enrolled in public school. His IEP is written that he has multiple disabilities. One of those is learning disability. The issue is they send home grade level homework and his tests are on the same level. He has another student that helps him because he does not have a scribe or someone assigned to help him daily. He's failing. What is our recourse, seeing the school isn't showing how they're aiding him to make incremental progress?
So you go back to the IEP and you go back into that specific academic goal. That has to be one of the SMART goals. So if the goal is not a SMART goal, then that's the first thing that you have to do. You have to go back and rewrite those goals so they're SMART goals. Okay, that's number one. If they already are a SMART goal and it says at the bottom, in each section of the IEP, it'll say, when the child is supposed to make progress or when you're supposed to get information. It could be quarterly, it could be every 6 weeks, it could be it could be semester or annual, right? So depending on what that says, you can change that as well in an IEP update meeting. So again, if a child or a teen is at tier 3 already and they're not making progress, you get to go in and say, child is not making progress, we have to change something up. What is the delivery? Who's delivering it? How fast? Maybe my child does need a scribe at this point. Can we practice using a scribe in one class and see if anything changes? So you can do some incremental changes so that you can actually be able to measure what's working. If you pile everything on at once, you won't know what's working. So if a scribe comes to mind that would make a change, offer that, do that, see if they'll help you do that for a week or two, see if there was a change. If that's the case, that needs to go into the IEP. So you get some wiggle room to practice.
How do you do that if you are a tier 3?
Oh, you absolutely do that if you're at tier 3. And it's a must because you're at a dead end wall. Nothing's changing. It's not going well. So you get to say, hey, I'd like to propose an opportunity that someone comes in and scribes for him. Or I think it's a young boy, I think. And can we try that for a couple days in that one class and see if we get any outcome? If that's positive, let's add to a second class. So you want to do it incrementally. 1, not to overload the school. 2, we got to get scribe in place if that's a solution. And 3, we have to see if it's working.
Okay. All right, the last question, we have 4 minutes. So I have one more question that was submitted ahead of time, and then this is your last chance if anybody else has any they want to type in. We just had my daughter's IEP. I asked that she have the autism diagnosis added to her Phelan-McDermid syndrome diagnosis in order to allow her to get additional services only allowed for children with the ASD diagnosis. For example, ABA and BCBA therapy. They tested her and came to the conclusion she did not have ASD, that her autistic behaviors were because of her learning disability. The at-home component of the test ranged mild to moderate ASD. Any advice on how to have this overturned?
By having the ASD label, can you tell me, let me go back other direction. Which of the services under the ASD label are you looking for the current to be added to the IEP? Which services?
I don't know if this person is on the webinar and can chime in, but some other people who I don't think were the original
Yeah.
after indicated that schools can't diagnose ASD, only doctors can. And then this question of, do they have an external diagnosis outside of school? But I don't know if this person is on the webinar, so we may not be able to clarify.
Right. So those 2 points are very, very important because the school, they're not diagnosticians regarding ASD. They're not docs. So you would have to have an outside, test or, eval really. And then, but the other question is, which services under ASD are you hoping for? And even without an ASD, even without the ASD diagnosis, can those services be added? That's another way to approach it. So can we get those services anyway, or with the ones that they're looking for?
This person must not be on.
Okay. Hi there.
Okay, and we just have 2 minutes left. Is there anything else anybody wants to ask?
Well, was this helpful? Did people feel engaged?
This was great, thank you.
Oh, good. That's one.
Yeah. We do a post-webinar evaluation, so
okay, good.
Hopefully we can get some feedback from everyone. Once you log off, you'll get an alert to please fill that out, so that can help us understand what was most helpful here.
Exactly.
Amy, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Your guest today. That was lovely.
So yes, thank you so much. And if anybody has any further questions, let us know, and have a wonderful rest of the week.
Yes, everyone, happy Wednesday, and I hope everything goes well for you.